Hello and welcome to the Promised Land, a show about Manchester United winning Manchester United. Positive, no negative here, Rob. Maybe, Lisandro Martinez, hopefully, fingers crossed, is okay. But on the whole, Rob, positivity. United beating West Ham 3-0.
Mm,
You were there? I
I
take
was.
it.
I
What do you
was, yeah.
think?
What do I think? I was very pleased. I think, Scott, we talked about in the last show, didn't we, about Wolves and that hour period where Man United looked like they had all their faculties together. Like they were playing at the correct tempo and the correct purpose. And I keep using that word over and over again. And again, that purpose was there for the whole of the game against West Ham. And I think United, by and large, controlled everything. West Ham had one or two breakaways, didn't they, and opportunities, but you expect that from any Premier League team. But just really pleased with the way they're gelling. Like you're bringing back, aren't you, these pros that have been out for a long time, but you still got your kids there. And I actually think it's the kids that pushed the envelope yesterday against West Ham. And that's, I think, the way you got to go for the rest of the season. Whatever happens, there will be injuries, there will be ins and outs again. But it's the young dudes you've got to stick with. I think you saw that picture there, which I'm sure will be on our thumbnail here. The three guys sat together right in front of me. It was actually on the side there. Garnacho, Mainoo, and Hojlund. That's your future, but it's also your present. They're the guys that are going to get you somewhere up the table.
Yeah, I mean, obviously United have other players, but yeah, just I think yesterday was just a reminder to be patient, right? And as much as United are expected to win, well, maybe not this United, but expected to win the league, and that's the standard that everybody holds United to. That being fans, also critics who expect United to be as well run as they were 12 years ago, or the Fergie years. If you're dealing with an 18-year-old, a 19-year-old, and a now 21-year-old as three of the leading lights really in your team, you have to be a bit patient with them. I only think back to a few weeks ago where Rasmus Hojlund was getting killed for not scoring goals, and now on his 21st birthday, that lovely take and finish with his right foot, guitar celebration. I think he's explained that enough times by now. It was a joke with his mates. They told him to do it, just in case you haven't seen it. But yeah, positive. But just be patient, because these lads are very talented. Obviously, we've seen what Kobe can do, and Garnacho as well, finding his space on the right side. Two well taken chances, really. I know one was a deflection, but all in all, something we don't see from United, a sound win, really. Like you say, Rob, there were chances for West Ham, but I think on the whole, and Eric Ten Hag's been talking about this when he has all his players back, everything seems to click and work better, at least.
Yeah, look, if you want a bog standard performance in the Premier League every single week, that's it. That's the standard. That's what you want to do. So yeah, you'll give a few chances away. It won't be perfect, but what you'll do is you'll control the game. You will show that you're the team at home. Like sometimes you don't see that with United, don't you? They look like lost. They're at Old Trafford on their own stage, and sometimes the away team comes and does their job, and United just look miffed. So that's where I think the positivity comes from, Scott, because like you just said, they're all young. You have to believe. Like I know that's a real Man United cliche: believe, believe, believe. But you haven't really got any choice but to believe. Otherwise, you just will be crying into your cornflakes every morning. Like you just be sad about everything all the time. You have to look at these young players and you have to say they've got the talent. Now we have to guide them to the point where they can do what they did against West Ham. And like you just said about Hojlund, we've consistently said on the show, not really hitting his numbers, but actually not displeased about his performances at all. Like we've liked what he's done, his body of work. So I think there's that 4 games on the spin. Is that right? He scored now. And the confidence that he'll take from that will be absolutely ginormous. He'll come off the pitch and he'll feel like he's validated at Manchester United. He'll be like, give me the ball anywhere now, and I think I can score. So, no, just very, very, very pleased with the performance and just pleased with how these young players are taking to it, because I've always believed in them. I've always thought that they were the right route to go. And I think when you look at Mainoo, you look at Garnacho, you look at Hojlund, that has to be the cornerstones of the team. You don't then have to worry about Rashford. You don't then have to worry about Bruno. You don't have to worry about Casemiro. They'll all fit in because that's how team sports work. They'll work around each other. And I think that was a good example yesterday. I think the experienced players played well as well. But the stars of the show for me are definitely the young players.
Yeah, it seems to be a nice camaraderie between them as well. Obviously, I think Garnacho and Hojlund have done a few different, post-match interviews over the course of the last few weeks and months. Garnacho and Colby have played in the same youth team. Obviously, Hojlund's been added to the mix now. I think that picture of the three of them. What was it about, Rob? Was that? What was your take on it? Because Kudus did it in the reverse game, didn't he? What do you think it was?
I think it was a little nod to what West Ham did in that first game.
Yeah, so do I. That's what
they both. If you think about it, because
Garnacho is that petty as well. I think.
I don't mind him being petty. Like I quite like that Garnacho. Every time he gets tackled, he rolls around on the floor because he's trying to control the game. Like that is gamesmanship. That's part of the game, isn't it? I think they did it because when Kudus did that and Paqueta was with him, it was like, I think it's a South American thing. Like there is obviously this rivalry obviously between Brazilians. Obviously Paqueta's Brazilian, and then you've also got South American there, Argentinian in Garnacho. And Garnacho initiated it. He was the one. He was like, I'm going to sit here and come sit with me for the photograph. And it worked perfectly, didn't it? It was a good moment. And I also liked what the manager said about it afterwards, because he said, I love the celebration. He was like, because it shows camaraderie. That shows what I want to see. We are together in the good moments and the bad moments. And I think that's a good hymn book to sing from, isn't it? That's how it should be, is that when you have that success, celebrate together and show that you mean it. And I liked it that Mainoo ran over as well, because he wasn't obviously involved in that goal, but he ran over and he was like, yeah, these are my boys. These are, I love this. This is
pretty
what we're
poignant
doing.
As well, Rob, on a weekend of, where obviously 66 years since Munich, and, outside the ground, obviously the Holy Trinity, and like it's just kind of, I'm not sure if it was intentional or anything like that, but you can draw comparisons between the two. Obviously, you got maybe a new bright generation of players to get behind.
It ran through my mind, when they ran over to us and sat down and posed for the photograph for the goal. That it went through my head. It went through my head that this club is founded on youth, is founded on the babes. And that team perished all those years ago, and United have carried on that tradition all the way through. Now, yes, we've not always had the greatest youth teams, but we've always brought youth products through. That is the lifeblood of Manchester United, and I know that a lot of United fans don't connect with that in the modern day. They're maybe part of the Galactico version, and they want the bigger players or whatnot. But I think you have to go this route. This is your best route. This is your best chance of success. I look at Garnacho, Scott, just as an individual, and I thought at 16 he could be world class, and now getting 19, I'm completely convinced he could be world class, 100%. And I look at Mainoo. I felt that before when he was 16, 17. He's now showing it, and you just have to keep building. Do you know what, Scott? There'll be harder weeks ahead. There'll be worse games at West Ham. They'll have bad performances. We'll be like, oh, what's happened to these kids? It will happen, but I think the proof is there. It's absolutely in front of us. These talented boys can do it. And I think you build something together, don't you? Like I like it that you can see. I think Hojlund said it as well in his interview, didn't he? He was like, I'm 21. These boys are like 18 and 19. He said, we are building something here and we know it. That's good. I like that. And that's the way it should be. And yes, there will be some failures also in there as well. And I think we have to take the rough with the smooth.
Obviously, some players have been, or young players have been leaving, not to everyone's satisfaction. But the United under-18s are, I'm counting, how many points is that? 17 points clear in their league, 14 out of 14. There's some other names maybe that is coming through the system. Harry Amas, maybe one of them. There's a few. I mean, just watch them. Have a look.
Your boy Shea.
Lacey. There's a ton of others. You got some, got Darren Fletcher's kids in there as well.
Yeah.
Lots of hype. Hey, if you're putting together form like this, half decent.
Yeah, but it's also, Scott, just about squad building in a sympathetic way. So it's not saying don't buy players, like no one's saying that, but at the same time, exploit the youth you have and push them forward. And like you're just saying there, that the under-18 team there being so far ahead in its league, that's the first time in many years that Man United at that level have shown something. Like going back even over 10 years, they've not been very good. That's the truth. You know, they've actually slipped down the league. I think they even slipped down a division at one point because they didn't have the depth in youth. And we've always called for that development to carry on. But it's cherry picking. You just take the right ones out. Like, you know, at City, you look for the Foden. You know, that's who you're looking for. You don't have to play young players in every position. You're just looking to take the best and develop the best and put them in with your senior players. You know, look at again at City, Rico Lewis, someone like that. You come in, someone look at him and they go, well, is he good enough? And you bring him in, he plays left back, he ends up playing centre back, he's in central midfield, he's in the England squad, and you're like, actually, he's quite good, isn't he? He'd probably walk into most teams, but he's still a fringe player at City. And United have to do the same thing, is that you bring these young players in sympathetically, you give them minutes. But one thing I really like, Scott, is during this hard period now, is that we've got to February, and do you know what? Garnacho's played a lot of minutes. Hojlund's played a lot of minutes, and now we're getting to Mainoo. Was that his 9th straight game or 10th straight game, something like that? So he's getting the minutes under his belt. That's how you do it. You just got to suck it up. And if you've got players who are out injured, and we'll talk about one today, which was very unfortunate yesterday, you've got to keep going. You've got to keep going with your young players. You've got someone like Cam Weiler behind there on bench, coming on and off now and then, a young player who you have to develop and give him minutes over time. So when players are injured, use your youth, and then they might surprise you.
Yeah, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch us on YouTube, The Promised Land, a Man United podcast. Like the video, subscribe, leave a comment, hit the notification bell as well, and follow us on social media at _Scott Saunders, at _Rob_B, and at TPLMUFC for the show as well. Switch into Mondays, I think, just because, you know,
kind of works,
easier.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it kind of works with United out of Europe. Less midweek games to contend with, so a little bit more time for our content to breathe. We've done the positives of the youth team. Casemiro looking maybe a little bit better on the pace. Diogo Dalot getting a lot of praise on Match of the Day too, for his role. Important block from him as well.
Massive, yeah.
Casemiro alongside Kobe is, I think, probably the two that you want. That's the player you want Kobe to learn off. And I saw, is there some frustration maybe that Kobe was substituted after a little while, and McTominay was brought on, another academy product, of course, but we've seen what McTominay does.
He got an assist.
Just chill. Like, he can't play. He's 18. He can't play 90 minutes all the time. You know, you need to.
Yeah, I agree with you. Just chill. But it was peculiar. Like when he went off, we were like, feels a bit weird. Like Kobe's really dominating the tempo in there. Like you could see in the 8 going up and down. What say about Casemiro, and I'm also going to add Bruno Fernandes to Scott, is that they both look more comfortable with someone like Kobe who can do a lot of that. I'm saying physical work, because Kobe doesn't really throw himself around, but he's just very assured. Like he gets the ball in good areas and does all the right stuff as what you want from a central midfielder. But I think Bruno, that was probably his best performance for me in the 8, in the sense that he was under control. It was quite interesting. It was towards the end of the first half. Bruno had the ball around the halfway line, and there was a lot of screams and shouts for like, get it forward, Bruno, from the crowd. And Bruno was like, no. And I was stood there going, you do that, Bruno. Just slow the game down. You're 2-0 up. You don't need to go and score another goal and give it away and get counter-pressed. Just calm it down. And I felt good about that, because I don't see that from Bruno. I don't see that know-how from Bruno normally. He normally responds to the crowd and will play a kind of Steven Gerrard Hollywood pass into the channel. And you're like, don't give the ball away for no reason. Don't be frivolous. And I liked that, Scott, because that's in-game management. That's being serious. So I think that's what Casemiro gives to them. Like he sits and he gives them a little bit more assurance. But I think Kobe has really helped Bruno. Bruno now, I think, looked more comfortable in that role yesterday than I've ever seen him before. So you've got a serious midfield, Scott. It's like 3 there. And I think Kobe coming off was a little bit of a shock. But look, Scott, you come on. His job in it is to try and impact your ability to score a goal.
He led to the 3rd goal as well, to be fair.
He gets the ball, he drives the ball, he slides in Garnacho, and it's a goal. So it worked. So you can't criticize the manager for that. But it did feel, because it was like 65th minute or 68th minute or something like that, it did feel a bit weird that Kobe was going off and we were a bit like, So I hope this isn't going to be a moment where tomorrow on the podcast I'm saying that was the moment where the game collapsed, but it wasn't. And the United are just a lot more confident in their own skin, even with the substitutions. It was probably the right thing to do. As you said, Kobbie can't play every single minute, but I think he's going to have to play quite a lot of minutes for United to be successful.
He's a bona fide starter now. We've been saying it for a while. But
England
obviously,
international. He's going to win the World Cup with England with Jude Bellingham. I've put my neck on that block. I believe that. I think they could be the best midfield in the world, those two. There's 2 8s. You know, that could take England to a completely different level because I think they're so intelligent in so many parts of their game. Now, I know that's a big statement for young players, but you want that expectation. You want to say they're that good. You want to say they're going to be world class. So someone like Jude Bellingham, when he was at Birmingham, no one wanted to talk about what he could be. He went to Dortmund, ripped it up. He's now at Real Madrid. It was only a few years ago we were talking about him being a kid at Man United potentially as a 17-year-old. And should we pay 20 million for him? Well, yeah, you should have done.
were we doing the podcast at the time? At that time,
yeah, we did talk
I
about.
Think we were, weren't we?
I think it's when he went to Dortmund, and I was definitely doing the masterclass before because we did masterclass shows on Bellingham, and we were like, you know, should you spend 20 million on a 17-year-old? And the general consensus from United fans, Scott, being honest, was no. They were like, well, you need to go and buy players that can impact your team. And we said at the time with Solskjaer, we were like, Ole probably wouldn't play him anyway. He'd probably put him on a bench. But that's all right because you've still got the player. You're going to play McFred. And, you know, then Bellingham can come into your team slowly. What did Bellingham do? Went to Germany, ripped it up. He's out Real Madrid and he's the man, isn't he? So I think England are very, very lucky in the sense there's been talk again about will Mainoo actually go for England? Well, he's an English lad from Stockport. I think he probably will. So he's played for England at all levels and he is that talented. And can you imagine? Like, England are very lucky. They've got so many good young players. Like we talked about Phil Foden a minute ago, Rico Lewis. They are stacked. They are deep, England. They've got a chance of winning a major tournament. I think there might be 1 or 2 Man United players in there as well.
Let's talk about a Dane, Rasmus Hojlund.
Yeah.
Just in a little bit more depth. Obviously, looks really confident now. Looks like he is on a scoring run. Casemiro winning the ball, which Erik ten Hag credited after a Lisandro Martinez little clip into the front, which didn't really work, but obviously Casemiro mopped up on the counter press. And Hojlund then gets the ball and shows that he's got a little bit of poise and can feint and can finish with his weaker foot.
Completely. And do you know what, Scott, in that moment, when he got the ball, again, I can give you my emotional evaluation from being there. As soon as he got the ball and kind of stepped inside on his weaker foot, like you said, I think I even said it out loud. I went goal because it felt like he got the moment correct. He just slowed it all down, chose his position like good strikers do, and buried it. And you know, it kind of reminded me, this is a big reminder, kind of reminded me of what Sergio Aguero used to do at City, is that he'd always get the ball and the game would slow down. He would get the ball, he'd find his spot, and he'd hit the target. And that's really what you want strikers to do, like learn how to hit the target, work the goalkeeper over and over and over and over again. And I think with Hojlund, yeah, in his earliest games, that was a criticism, wasn't it? It was like, bit wasteful at times, but maybe we need to create more for him. So he's used to being in those spots. So I loved that yesterday because he kind of created his own chance. He got the ball in a good area. And I think maybe 6 weeks ago, he just slashes at that and goes over the crossbar or slashes it and it goes wide and we go, oh, wasted opportunity. It's funny how maturity, Scott, can eke into you in just a matter of weeks because you practice, and you get to that spot and it starts making sense in your head. He gets there, and it did feel like he was going to score straight away. As soon as he came in on the inside, it was like he's opened the play up. It's a good shot here. Buries it, doesn't he? And I hope we see more of that now. Like he's in a good groove. And again, Scott, it was only 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, I was saying he looks miserable. He's not getting the ball. He's working hard. He's coming off of 70, 80 minutes. He looks knackered. He's like, I've had one chance today. Now he's getting more chances. He's shining again. You saw with those goals yesterday, with his goal yesterday, celebrating with his teammates. He looks like a happy boy. And after the game, him and Garnacho together having a big cuddle. They're feeling it. And you've got to keep riding that, haven't you? When it's good, you've got to take that momentum, stick with it, and take it into the next match.
I just want to talk about the manager a second. We will talk about Martinez. because obviously that has the potential to really upset the rest of the season, depending on how bad it is. But Ten Hag's got a lot of stick, obviously, from a lot of people, and fairly. But one thing he's always maintained is that he needs a settled, or he needs his best team or his most settled team.
Yeah.
And you've seen now in the Wolves' capitulation before winning was maybe something you can put aside. But you look at the first 60 minutes against Wolves, you look at the West Ham game, largely with the same team, barring the one change, Varane versus Maguire. Is he on to something, Rob? Do you think that obviously that he needs to do it for longer, but obviously if the injury situation gets worse again, that how is this going to play in? Because Ten Hag has shown he's always said that I need my players to learn routines. I need the 11 to play together. They need to get used to each other. They need to defend as 11 and attack as 11. And obviously that excuse doesn't really wash when you're losing and you're United's manager. Where do you stand on that currently?
No, look, I think we've always said with Ten Hag that the injuries are a problem, that the tactics have been a little bit brittle at times, but repetitive when you could have changed it up. Like yesterday, like we just said about Mainoo, if Mainoo comes off, Scott, in the last 20 minutes, you capitulate and you don't win the game, and guess what? We're going to be talking about the manager again, aren't we? But I think that you're totally right there, is that you've got to do these repetitions together. You've got to get the team together and get people fit. So like yesterday, one of the reasons why you bring Kobbie off and leave Casemiro on is you need to get minutes into Casemiro's legs. He needs the minutes. So at that moment, it felt like probably Casemiro was the guy to pull, because it's 70 minutes in or you're 65 minutes in, and you stage managing those minutes.
He did say before the game, Casemiro gets better with every consistent appearance that he makes.
And I think that's the same for most players, like Luke Shaw. Like you see with Luke Shaw, is that as soon as Luke Shaw's got 6 games under his belt, he's completely different coming back from injury after the first 1, 2, or 3. Just completely different. Looks different, mentally different, covers different, physically, drive the space better. And I think with Casemiro, you give him more minutes, he's going to be fitter, isn't he? It's just logic. It's obvious for those things. But then you've got to get a certain amount of players up to speed, Scott, all together. And I think that's kind of where United are in this moment. Obviously, Lisandro Martinez, that injury, something we'll talk about today, is potentially crushing to Man United in terms of this getting everyone going. Will it be catastrophic? I don't know. But you see, even just yesterday, before like Martinez went off, how important these individuals are within the system. And they make each other better, Scott. Like I think this is the other way we have to look at it, is that I talked about the midfield as a whole there just a minute ago. And I don't think it's about Casemiro as an individual. I don't think it's about Bruno as an individual. I don't think it's about Kobbie as an individual. It's about the three working as a midfield together. And that's how you get performances. That's how you get results. And it's the same with the front three. Look at it. Rashford, Hojlund, Garnacho. It's all about pairings and triplets. And I think that's what the manager has missed, because he had to change his team so often, hasn't he? Like it's constantly a different fullback every week. You're like, who's playing left back this week? Who's playing right back? Oh, my centre backs are out. Oh, now I'm going to have to drop kids in. Oh, now we've seen Onana's made another mistake, and it just rolls, doesn't it? And it's just negative. Maybe now he'll be able to have some more positive spins on those things. And I don't think the manager's wrong. Like we've always said it, having injured players hurts you, doesn't it? Like look at Chelsea as an example of a team that cannot get any slice of form going under a new coach. It's a similar situation in many ways. You've got players that are capable, but why are you not hitting those marks? And I think with United, that's been a big question mark for the whole season, is that we still expect a higher performance level even when players are coming in and out of the team.
These are the reasons why I've got stick for defending the manager too much potentially, but I just look at it and I think if you've got injured players, how many managers can even get can make much of a difference? So just see what he's got. Let's just give him the rest of the year to see and to prove himself. Yeah. And so far, like since the turn of the year, United's form's been good.
Like this isn't a Chelsea podcast, but it's interesting, isn't it, to see how the Chelsea fans are reacting to this spell with Pochettino. And already you've got a big wave of Chelsea fans saying, "Get out of my football club!" Right?
Get Mourinho back.
Well, all right. It's like It's just
Honestly,
hilarious.
they're saying it. They're saying it. It's
If
funny.
they are saying it, then you don't know football. Hello, I don't want to be like that, but I think the whole thing with Pochettino is that absolutely they are failing at the moment. But there has been reasons. There has been injuries. There has been players coming back in and out of the team. There has been young players playing minutes. So it's the same issue at Manchester United, isn't it? This is you can't be a mad wizard as the coach and just make things work all the time. You have to keep grinding till you get somewhere. And I think it's bizarre, like Chelsea fans doing that. I don't want to make this as a pop at Chelsea fans, but it kind of shows how spoilt they are over the years. Is that you had Tuchel, and then he's gone out the door, and as Potter, he's gone out the door, and then you get someone like Pochettino, who's probably perfect for your project long term. Oh, we've lost some games, we're not in the top 10. Out the door. That's very Chelsea, isn't it? And I wouldn't be surprised if Pochettino does get sacked, because that's what that football club has done in the past. And that's why I think also with Ten Hag, we've tried to back him whilst being soft. Like, I've criticised him, definitely. I think some of his tactical choices and choices from the technical area have not been fantastic at times. But yesterday, he makes that change with Cobby. He brings on Scotty. Scotty gets you an assist. Well done. That's what your job is. Well done. You're there to know the best choice better than we are. Do you know what I mean? So I've always had that about Ten Hag. I've always felt that he at least has his faculties and knows what he's doing. It's just that you need results. And I think yesterday, you think about that West Ham game, Scott, 3-0. That's the kind of game that maybe even, again, 5-6 weeks ago might have been completely different. Completely different game. West Ham come and do you on a counter punch. David Moyes just sets up to hit you on the break, and you get broken. It did happen yesterday 2-3 times where the break was on and we made those last gasp tackles. You mentioned Delo there, and credit to him for that defensive moment. It was a big moment for United. But they were happening more, weren't they, weeks ago, and we were getting punished in almost every scenario. Yesterday, you didn't get punished. It's 3-0. Everyone's happy. You move on to the next football match.
Which is Aston Villa away. Difficult one. But hey, I know that we've pretty much resigned ourselves to United not making top 5. But I think they're 6 points off currently. Obviously, Tottenham dropped points at the weekend. You go to Villa, you close in to within 5 points of them. That's a difficult game. But if you're on it, I think it's not impossible.
I think it's smart not to look at the table, right? Because I think the thing is that this is where the carrot dangles in front of Man United. It's like, you're not that far away. Like, as we said, we were doing shows not long ago, you're only 3 points behind Man City. That only felt like a blink of an eye ago. I think you've got to look at yourself. You've got to look at your performances. And if you go to Aston Villa and put in the best version of yourself, cliche, then you'll be okay. And I think as good as Villa have been this season, they're not perfect. You can hurt them if you do all the good things.
Especially a United front line with that back line.
And you're telling me Emery will be looking at that and going, right, that front three is popping now. It means that we can't be as expressive in these areas. We have to look after those players because Hojlund's on form, Garnacho skinning everyone on the right. Rashford, I think, again, I thought was better yesterday, and I think continues to just slowly but surely get, percentage point better every time. And there's more positive things about United than you can say really about negatives. I said, I think we will kind of cap off a little bit about Lisandro as well, kind of what I saw in the warm up with his foot, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But I think when you look at the next game, you go to Aston Villa. Villa are not perfect at home now, obviously, after getting beaten recently. And that's a good thing to go and exploit, isn't it, Scott? Because you can go there and play the counter press a little bit more. And you can say to Villa, right, you come on to us, but we've got the pace in behind and we're going to hurt you like that. And that's going to be our game plan. And you can kind of simplify things. But yeah, you go to Aston Villa more confident now simply because you're playing better, not because Villa are playing worse. Villa had a good game this last week. And I think there's opportunity there for Man United to go get points. Don't look at the table. Just look at yourself. 3 points every week, and you will slowly but surely climb to where you want to be, and you'll be in the mix for that top 4. Which, again, let's be honest, Scott, that's the goal, isn't it? This year now is you got to somehow get back in that Champions League spot and be competing towards the end of the season somewhere in that top 4 where you feel comfortable in yourself.
So, Rob, just before we move on and talk about Martinez, what does Erik ten Hag have to do this season to keep his job into next season?
Well, Champions League, I think, is imperative. That's the main thing. So top four, but as we've talked about before, 5th place might get you in the Champions League this season, and that's a big plus for English clubs. I don't think it will be the be all and end all. Like, I think I've also said he could get 4th, Scott, and still get sacked. Like, if the performances are not there and if Ineos don't believe that this manager can take the club forward. But of course, if performances go the way they have now in the last couple of games, then that's positive, isn't it? That's what you want to see, and that's what the board will want to see. And I think with Eric, that's all he can do. As he puts this together, if he's got more injuries and, he might well be losing his centre-back now for a period of time again, that's a huge loss, but they still have to keep rolling. So with all this positivity that's been generated, I think, in the last week or two, it's somehow got to stick now, and you've got to take it towards the end of the season. But I do think Champions League is imperative for the football club. Like, as I said, in terms of investment, being in that competition just frees up so much more money and pushes your profits in the right direction. So I think that's the basics of it, though I don't think it's the complete totality. Champions League is really important to Manchester United, because then next season you go buy the players you want and you can carry on your project.
Yeah, I personally, I don't think it's as black and white as that. I think if he comes 6th and United have had a good end to the season in terms of their style of play, their identity, I think that'll be enough. Personally, it might not be the same for everybody, but just look at the alternatives you've got to bring in. I think this United that Ten Hag has been working with for the last 18 months, good God, man. Good God. Like, I think he deserves a chance, a clear run at it. And obviously, it's easier to say that when United have performed a little bit better, and think a lot of the things he's been saying over the course of the injuries. I know it's only a small sample size of 2 matches, but you can see that what he's saying actually has some merit, because what he's talking about would happen when his players were back is happening to me.
Exactly.
But we'll see. We'll see.
You're getting that upside in a very short space of time, aren't you? You're seeing it, and you're believing a little bit more. That's the other side of it. I talked about belief earlier on, and I think that's a big thing for the board. I think the one other just counterpoint there, Scott, is we still don't really 100% know how Ineos view the project long term in terms of the manager. Like, we don't know whether they really like Ten Hag or are not sure, or it might be the other way, Scott. It might be that they love Ten Hag. They might have spoken to him and gone, actually, we really like how you're managing from behind the scenes, and you kind of correlate with our values, so we'll stick with you. Then 6th, you can have a good 6th, Scott, or a bad 6th. So you could be 6th where you feel like you've underperformed and you should have been in the Champions League, and you messed up, say, your last 4 games of the season, and you could have walked into that 4th spot and been in the Champions League comfortably, but then you've messed it up. You think last year, Scott, when we won the League Cup, United came 3rd in spite of their form. It wasn't because of their form. Newcastle fell off massively, didn't they, and came 4th. So I think this is why it's not so binary as to just say Champions League. But I do know that if you're looking at, say, Champions League brings an extra 20 or 30 million pound worth of profit over the top, it means something to businessmen, and especially if you're putting money into the football club now where you're buying new players. So Ten Hag will be judged partially on that. And I think for us, Scott, we just want to see better performances, don't we? We just want to see the guys going out there. And the good thing is, Scott, the effort level looks like it's there again, doesn't it? Just last 2 or 3 games, they look switched on up here. I think that's a massive part for this team.
That's important. Yeah, usually when a manager's at the end, you see that players have essentially down tooled,
switched off. Absolutely.
I think it's been some suggestions that we've seen that, but I wouldn't say that maybe in certain instances, but I don't think that's the case at all. You look at the players that are in there now, that the effort levels are appropriate, and it feels like as many people as the manager's ticked off, I think he still has the majority.
Yeah, his job is to tick people off, though. If they're not doing their job, he should challenge them. So, he should do that without recourse. Now, individual management, I think you can always question it. Marcus Rashford is a really good example, isn't it? It's that we've talked a lot about Marcus and what's happened recently, and we don't need to go any deeper into that. But I think his form is improving, and it's one of the things Ten Hag has said. Ten Hag's talked a lot about that and said, I think Marcus is an improving player over the last few weeks. So I'm happy about that. Whether Marcus is overly happy or not doesn't matter. What matters is his form and being professional. And I think we're seeing that last 2 or 3 games is that Marcus is putting in better performances. And I think that's infectious. I think that runs through a team where players then just kind of go, actually, we're in a good moment here. So I won't moan as much. I'll knuckle down. I'll do my job. Oh, guess what? We've won 3-0 against West Ham. Everything is rosy again. What did I always say, Scott? Nothing solves problems better than winning. Win football matches, people forget about stuff quite quickly.
Now, final topic, something that might stop Man United winning football matches. Lisandro Martinez's injury. Now, we'll talk about what you saw, Rob, in a bit, but obviously I'll just explain the situation. There was a coming together. Martinez was shepherding the ball out of play. Can't remember who it was with. Soufal, wasn't it? Koufal?
I think so, yeah.
And yeah, it was him. And obviously, kind of he was shepherding it out, bit of jostling over it, and Soufal falls on Martinez, and his leg kind of turns in on itself, and he clutches his knee. There's that image going around of Martinez in screaming pain. Then you see him kind of roll around and bashing the floor like he's frustrated that this might mean he's got another long-term injury. He got up, played on for a little while, and then went back down at the next break of play after Dalot had made that block from Jared Bowen. He walked off, and Ten Hag has said along the lines of, it's a personal disaster. And if Martinez is to miss, let's say, the rest of the season, it is a disaster. Like, to me, I've made my personal opinion is I think Martinez is and has been, probably since he arrived, the most important defender at the club. You could deal with this if it was Maguire. You could deal with it if it was Lindelof. You could deal with it if it was Varane, as bad as it would be. But in terms of the style of play, the tenacity, his ability to bring the ball out of defense, Martinez is head and shoulders above everybody. So it's a big blow, isn't it?
It's a massive blow, and I don't think it's any kind of coincidence that United's form has started to improve while Martinez has been back in the team, both in and around the squad, and his leadership skills. I'll explain a little bit what I saw in the game, because I tweeted it out and there was some conjecture. A few people tweeting me back and were like, oh, I don't know what you've seen. I'm always there early. I always watch the warm-ups. I'm a bit of a geek at Manchester United. I want to see everything. I want to know what's going on. I'm nosy. So I was watching the warm-up like I normally do. And it was quite clear when he came out for the warm-up that he wasn't right on his foot. Like, we know that it was being iced in the last game. He came off there and that he was having a little bit of a problem. And it was a bit of a 50-50 ball in the kind of five-a-side warm-up that they do like half an hour before the game. And he kind of clashed with Dalot. And he immediately went to ground and kind of punched the ground a few times and then was playing with his foot and then didn't really want to get back into any kind of contact with any other players. And it wasn't good. And that's when I tweeted out at that time that it's not right. There's something there. He's feeling it. I think Bruno came over, kind of gave him a hug and was like both looking down at his foot, like what the foot hurts. So he obviously went into the game and I think he was fine. But in the first half, I definitely recognised, and so I don't know if this came across on TV, that he couldn't jump on the foot very well. There was one time where the ball was swung in on a corner and he was on the front post and he just couldn't get up, just couldn't jump. And he was almost like lame. Now, he played through the game fine, Scott. I think the thing is that when you're carrying an injury like that, and especially one that maybe you're worried about, that then normally leads to another injury. You can get that extra impact injury because you're just not doing it properly. You're always looking after that foot. And then I think in that moment when he kind of has that incident with Soufal, yeah, it's probably more to do with Soufal and an accident and, a player kind of falling on you and you twisting your knee. But it's so common, isn't it? When you've got a foot injury or a muscle injury, that another part of the leg goes. It just happens so often. Now, players play with injuries all the time, but that's the call you have to make. There's that risk factor. And I think with Martinez, even if he comes back, Scott, like say we get great news in the next day or two and he's had a scan, there's no problem. Maybe he's out for a couple of weeks or something like that. It's just a little bit of a pull. That's something that has to be managed, because can you play this guy 90 minutes every week if he's still nursing a sore foot or a problem, maybe with a bone or a bruising injury that repeats a lot? It's a problem. But if he's out of your team for a period, like his ball progression from the back is so elite and so important that if you lose that, you haven't really got anyone that can do it. You just haven't. And
on
that
either
again,
side, not a right centre back, not a left centre back.
No, like I think we saw yesterday that Varane came on, and again, people were like, "Oh, why did Maguire start and Varane didn't?" And I think just on form over the season, I think Maguire before the injury was much better than Varane, and Varane was like almost left out completely, wasn't he, for periods? Now I think if you're stuck with Varane and Maguire going forward, and that is a little bit more worrying because they both can get run. They don't have maybe the agility or the mobility of a Martinez. And I think Martinez has shown just again that little pocket of time that he is massively important to this project at Man United. So I think it also makes you think, Scott, into the future, and that is that Man United needs to go and buy a centre back somewhere in that.
They need two for me.
They need two, and again, I think the response of full time yesterday from a lot of United fans to me on Twitter was that he's a crock. He's a crock. Now I don't believe that, but I do believe that it means you need to go and buy another centre back. You either need to develop Camboala now and feel that he's your guy. Like that next season, he can fill in a lot more minutes. So you start the development now, and United have started doing that. But if he's not the guy, he's not your next Mainoo in midfield, or he's not your next Garnacho in the attack, then you just got to go and buy someone. Got to go buy someone, go get a centre back that can do the job. Maybe a young centre back who's 21, 22. Is it still a development project and can work alongside your more senior players? Like we saw yesterday, Victor Lindelof came back. Now, it's not going to break any headlines, but if Lindelof is fit, it won't surprise me if Lindelof is the left centre back in the weeks ahead.
Luke Shaw as well.
Luke Shaw might come back inside, but I think again that you're so compromised, aren't you, in the fullback positions, that when you have to chop and change so often, that Luke Shaw can definitely play left centre back and might even be the most suitable option. But then you're maybe hoping that Malacia comes back and hitting the ground running, and he ends up playing left back. But I think we did see last season at times that he failed in that function, so that might work, but the margins for errors are slim, aren't they? They start getting a lot more slimmer, and you start thinking, well, you're not playing out from the back correctly. Luke can definitely do it, and I think Shaw and Maguire could work. I think at the moment you're more likely to see Luke Shaw carry on at left back, and I think you'll have Maguire and Varane chopping and changing. Do you see Varane came on again yesterday, Scott, and played left centre back? You know, all of that talk for months of he can't play left centre back, and now he is. That's what you've got. So you're going to have to go with it, and all we can say is fingers crossed that Lisandro is okay and that it's more of a short-term thing. When he walked off in front of me, Scott, he didn't look too bad. Now, I'm just saying that as a bit of blue sky. Like when you have an ACL or anything like an ACL, you can walk on it. You can walk forward on it, but they normally don't want you to. You're normally stretched off, or you're pulled off, or they're kind of testing it as you walk off. He did go off slowly and like gingerly, like was flexing it, but he didn't seem like it was a massively serious injury. So I was quite shocked when I left the ground and the news was from Ten Hag that it looks like a bad one, because we all thought they're taking him off after an hour. It's okay. He'll be okay. So fingers crossed. Let's keep the butcher, keep Licher in the team, because he is so important to Manchester United.
I don't think there's many more important players than him. But anyway, we will see. We await news on Licher. Hopefully, it's not as serious as it was initially feared. But it's been such rotten luck for him for a year, really, nearly, since that Sevilla game last year, and he was carried off. Just been not good for him at all. I mean, you don't like to see players struggle with missing matches as regularly as he has. So fingers crossed he will get back soon and it's not as bad as people are thinking initially. I'm sure we'll hear something within the next 24, 48 hours.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll wrap it there. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and watch us on YouTube, The Promise and the Man United Podcast. Apple and Spotify is where you can find us on audio. Like this video on YouTube, subscribe, leave a comment, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a show. And follow us on the socials at @Scott Saunders, @_Rob_B, and at TPLMUFC. We'll be back later this week to preview Aston Villa. We should have more news on Martinez by then. And then anything else that happens in between, we'll be sure to talk about as well. Thanks to Rob. I've been Scott from the Promised Land Podcast. Until next time, everyone, have a great week.